Okay, well, good morning, everyone. All right, let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. There we go. Welcome to another great day in the city of Concord, right? There we go. We are going to start. Now that you all have been seated, I'm going to ask you all to rise again. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd also like to recognize Reverend Keith Patterson from St. Paul's Episcopal Church.
Good morning, all. God of many names, God of the seasons, God of the eons, the beginning and the end, before us and after us. Through the lesson of the Good Samaritan, we are challenged to consider that all members of the human family are not strangers to be feared, but neighbors, friends to be loved. In wisdom, you have placed us, members of many faith traditions, in close proximity to each other, so that we may hold each other up, that we may learn from each other and love one another. Take away the arrogance and hatred that infect our hearts, break down the walls that separate us, unite us in the bonds of love, and help us build the beloved community of peace and goodwill. Bless the food that we are about to receive. Bless the hands that have brought this food from the fields of creation to our tables. Bless the hands that have prepared it and the hands that will serve it. Let us always be grateful and make us always mindful of the needs of others. Amen, Ameen, Insha Allah.
Thank you, Reverend. We are all going to enjoy a heart-healthy breakfast this morning, right? We'll promise, right? Thank you, Jim. And then we will quickly start our program following that, and I promise I'll have you all to work on time, right? All right, close enough. Enjoy. Everybody had a little nourishment? Feeling energized? Jackson? Okay. Well, welcome again to the 18th annual Mayor's Prayer Breakfast. Before I begin with recognizing the first reading from Chief Osgood, I wanted to share just a few thoughts with you all. And bear with me for the first part. It's the folks I'd just really like to, first of all, this is one of those crowds where you can go around to each table and recognize everyone. It's one of those kind of crowds. So thank you all for being here. But I have to tell you, it's very special for me to have former Mayor Hager sitting with us here today. Always great to have a former mayor. Yesterday I got a visit from former Mayor Donovan, who apologized that he couldn't be here. He wanted to be here with us all. And he actually, this is one of his favorite events, he said. So, but he is actually busy working, and so he's excused, right? You can tell him all that I said he was excused. I have several of my counselors here with me today. Councilor Nyan, Councilor McClure, Councilor Cohen, Councilor Keach, Councilor Champlin, Councilor Shurtleff, and Mayor Pro Tem St. Hilaire. Thank you all for coming this morning. Okay. And a former city councilor and county commissioner, Liz Blanchard. Thank you all for being here. I'm not sure exactly when I should recognize her, but I'll try it this time, maybe several points throughout the morning. But Liz has served this community for a long time, the city in Pennacook, and she's decided to step down from being a county commissioner. And I went home one day and my wife Tara said, "Hey, I'm going to run for county commissioner." I said, "You're going to do what?" But she's the newly elected county commissioner. So Tara Reardon's here. And these following people are expected to be here, so Mr. Manager, thank you for being here. Assistant City Manager, Bahia, LeBrun, good to see you all. To see how they all sit right up front? It's important. They know it's budget time soon, so they all sit up front. So, I'd like you all to take just a quick look at the program, and I'm not going to read it all to you, but clearly, we couldn't do this without sponsors. Thank you all so much for your willingness to give and contribute. There was a wonderful piece done by Helen McGlashan, the chair of this breakfast, who recently printed in the paper that talked a little bit about where the money goes, what it's for, and over the years, we've been able to contribute back to the homeless community and emergency shelters. We've been able to contribute back to the task force to end racism and intolerance, and they've done some wonderful things. Jessica Fogg does the wonderful multicultural festival day that I think has become an actual premier event in the city. So we've been able to contribute to those type of events, and I thank you all the sponsors, because those things wouldn't happen without you. Now, here's the important part. If you see on the back, there's a committee member list, okay? The first thing you need to do is you actually probably just cross my name off the list, all right? Because without Jessica and Margaret and Suzanne and Helen and Linda and Tim and Frida and Joanna, this would not be possible, okay? It would not be possible. I tend to just get in the way. They make things happen. So it is with a true heartfelt thank you. They make this all happen, trust me. So, my son Jackson's here, and he's with Bishop Brady School, and I want him to know you don't prepare for this the way I have, because I did not prepare a speech this morning. I'm just going to share from the heart, okay? So, Jackson, don't do this. You want to actually prepare. In the past, we've talked about homelessness, we've talked about food insecurity, we've talked about new Americans who are here, so many are here today, and it's wonderful to see you all. And in talking to the committee about what the theme should be, one of the ideas we proposed was to talk about the Good Samaritan. And why? Well, I thought it was time that we needed to say thank you. When you look around this room, it's full of Good Samaritans. And it's you who give and give. You set aside your personal feelings sometimes. You show the love and the compassion for others. You give so generously and freely of your time. And the key thing is you do it without any expectation of return. And I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm going to break my rule. I'm going to recognize some folks in the audience. Because usually when you have an audience like this, you go, thank you, everyone. But it's really great to see our Concord police officers are here. We have Concord firefighters are here. I mean, these are the folks who are on the front lines helping people every day. And clearly, they don't do it for the money. I mean, they make a difference in our community. I have Jackie Watmo over here, who are from our Human Services Department, who is truly on the front lines, helping folks who come through our doors every day, who are oftentimes in the worst of times, desperate for housing and food. It's keeping the lights on, the heat on, and her staff, and Jackie is one of the most humble individuals you'll ever meet, but she makes a difference in so many people's lives every day. It's amazing what they're able to do. And I am very proud of so many of our city employees who do that. We have Dr. Rath with us here today. As many of you know, she's retiring after, and is it 29 years or 30 years? 29 years. But she is so inspiring to so many of us in the community, the youth, the next generation of Good Samaritans. We all can't thank you enough for what you've done and how you've inspired all of us. And the teachers at Concord High School and throughout Merrimack Valley, what they do every day. I come from a family with 2 teachers. They clearly don't do it for the money either. I mean, they make a difference in what they give, all the extra in children's lives. It is amazing. So thank you, Dr. Rath. I want to give a big welcome to Principal Elliott from Bishop Brady High School. She is a particularly special person in my heart because she takes care of my son every day. But it is so great to have you in our community, and she sets such a high bar at Bishop Brady, the expectations from those students, and they meet it every single day, whether it's going into nursing homes or going to the Boys and Girls Club or any charitable organization that they give back to. You set such a high standard, and I'm so proud of not only Concord High School, but Bishop Brady and the educators in our community. It's just amazing. And as I walk around the room and I try to personally thank each of you, I got my United Way table over here, and I have to tell you, they are scared to see me coming, trust me. Because every time I see Patrick Dust, I say, hey Patrick, I have an idea. What is it gonna cost me now? But you know what? They come through every single time. Whether it be coming up with money for a homeless shelter or you name it, they truly have identified the needs in a community, and they make sure they target those monies and those energies towards those things. They make a huge difference. Our faith community, it is so great to see you all here this morning. I think I was going to somebody said we should take roll as to who didn't make it, but you're all here. And I want to give a special thank you to both Firth and South Church, who have opened their doors, opened their hearts for so many years to welcome those who are in the most difficult conditions in the winter, and open their doors for shelter. I can't thank you enough for all you've done. I mean, you all got a candy cane, right? Brenda Perkins, an amazing individual. She's always got something cooking, truly. And now we have Hearts for Kindness. Thank you for putting this together. I told her I woke up this morning and there she was, she and Jessica. But thank you. I mean, those are the type of things that make a huge difference. Haverwood Heritage Heights, my neighbors over on the Heights. I didn't realize it, but it's kind of scary. Sometimes you never know if someone's listening. And several years ago when we talked about food insecurity, well, I didn't know, but it was 5 or 6 years ago probably? They started a food drive for the Capital Region Food Program, and since then they've raised over $20,000 just from this breakfast, $20,000 since that breakfast to go towards the food program. Amazing work that they do, and great neighbors. So, I could continue to go on and on. I'm gonna just a couple things. So I want my family's here, so I'm gonna take this is the opportunity you get to be playing mayor. Yeah, that's right. It's great. My wife is a true inspiration to me, and she volunteers. It's kind of funny. People say, "How do you stay married?" And I say, "Well, we don't see each other very often. It feels like that." She's going to a meeting, I go to a meeting. But she heads up the local crisis center here, and I can't think of many people who can put myself, the city manager, and our police officers in high heels to walk a mile down Main Street to bring awareness towards sexual and domestic violence. The Reardon sisters. This is a scary part because they are incredible cooks, and I'm scared at Thanksgiving what's going to happen to me. But they give to the food pantry, and have been doing it for years and years and years. And so many of you are just like them, that you give, you don't ask for anything, there's not looking for any recognition, but they make a difference in people's lives. I keep talking about family. Terry Blake, she is my family. She has volunteered. She had a career at Blue Cross. She retired. She thought she was going to play golf. She found out she didn't want to be spending time at home with Carol. Smart move. I can say that because Carol's my golf partner on Tuesday nights. But Terry volunteers. Next thing you know, she's running a shelter. And she's not just running a shelter, but she's taking people home, and she's getting clothes. And it's people like Terry and all of you who make a huge difference. Lastly, I'm going to share one last story, and I'll stop. But So Tara was at White Mountain Coffee yesterday, and she had a meeting with an individual, went back to work, and everything was fine. And all of a sudden, at the end of the day, a person from the coffee shop showed up. Tara had forgot her wallet. Who would have thought that somebody would just happen to hold it all day? They could have easily disappeared. But this person, this individual, who is working in a coffee shop, probably not making millions of dollars, they went out of their way to return the wallet to Tara. And that's the kind of community we live in. As I say, it's the people who will give so freely to themselves. And this is what I want you to remember. So my dad taught me, he is truly my role model. He gives more than anybody I know. He's never asked for anything, and he does it by example. He's never said, this is how you do it, but he just said, I've just watched. And Jackson, he can't stand walking down the street with me because it takes forever when I try to talk to everybody. Well, Jackson, let me tell you, walking down the street with your grandfather was worse than walking down the street with me because he knew everyone. But you know what? He said, remember that everyone is your neighbor, everyone. And that everyone we encounter, we're to love, because we love all of mankind. And that's what about, to me, being a good Samaritan is, and all of you. So thank you all for being here, and I will quickly be quiet now and start with the program. It is my honor. It's my honor and privilege to, and I just asked you to just kind of come up after one another. We'll just keep the program moving. To recognize first our police chief, Chief Bradley Osgood, for our first reading. Chief.
The parable of a Good Samaritan. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey and brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise."
I am honored to share with you this morning the words of my dear good friend, the late Jim Yonda, Jesuit priest, poet, playwright. Many years ago, he wrote this poem in honor of Dorothy Day. He calls it The Water Strider. "Do what you would wish them to do unto you," a voice whispered. And she responded with hospitality, with soup and benches and bags of clothing. Yes, clothing and feeding and housing, the homeless, the rejected, the unwanted, the absurd Christs who fit not in churches, nor prisons, nor hospitals. The absurd Christ who slipped through every mental grid and rational sieve, those to whom no law or structure can apply. The Christ walking on water instead of using boats or bridges. The Christ reaching their purpose to live, to love, and embracing it.
I didn't know you were that tall, Jim. I knew I was that short, but I didn't know you were that tall. Good morning. I want to thank you for inviting me today. It's Helen McGlashan that actually invited me. I apparently made the mistake of walking by her house one afternoon. So much for that walk. I'm not going that way again. But so I asked Helen, so I of course said yes. How can you not say yes to Helen? And then so I asked her what the topic was. This was in August, so who remembers, right? And she said, it's about being a good Samaritan. And then, so I asked her, so what do you mean by that? And so she said, the definition is someone who sees a need and then steps in and offers help and hope. So then I asked Helen, what do you want me to talk about? And she said, talk about the Community Loan Fund, which is the Hampshire Community Loan Fund, which is where I work. And I thought, well, that ought to be easy. And then Tara Reardon also works at the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, and so I asked her, I figured, it's Jim's breakfast, she'd know what was going on here. And so I asked her what I should know about this, and she said, whatever you do, don't talk past 9 a.m. So I think we're going to be all right. So I want to do three things this morning. I want to focus a little bit on invisibility. The Good Samaritan saw somebody, invisible people, invisible needs, invisible ways to help and offer hope. And the second theme would be about action and the Good Samaritan's aspiration to act from his or her values, which I realize can be tricky business. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about the Community Loan Fund, because Helen told me to. And what needs do we see, and how do we offer help, and how do we help people act on their values as investors? So the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund was created in 1983, right here. And some people think I actually started the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, but I didn't. I like get that out of the way right away. I'm sort of the first hired gun, but I didn't think it up. I think it's brilliant, but I didn't think it up. I just was the first person to try to make something happen with it. And so, when I was hired, there's two beliefs in which the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund is based on. And the first one is that, there's lots of problems out there. People have lots of problems, but there's one set of those problems that has to do with lack of access to capital. It's not about low income, it's not about education, it's about you can't get credit even if you can be responsible with that credit. And the classic example is home ownership. You can rent for 50 years, pay all your bills, and then even if the house you want to buy wouldn't cost you any more per month, you can't get a loan because you don't have the down payment or you don't fit into the box you have to fit in, the ratios and everything. So that's an example of lack of access to capital. And my father was an Episcopal minister, which always amuses me when I come to a prayer breakfast. I always think he's probably paying attention. And he was a good and generous man and a Boy Scout leader. I grew up in a house with brothers. So definitely the theme that I got growing up was God helps those who help themselves. And at the same time, clearly my father was helping me, and I could see the people helping him. So sometimes people need a little bit of help to help themselves. And I think people like to think that they do it themselves, but we all get help. So our goal at the Community Loan Fund is to see which problems people have that might be able to, they might be able to solve for themselves if they had a little know-how and a little capital. So that's the first belief, that some problems are about access to capital. The second belief is that there's plenty of capital, and there's lots of people that own or manage capital, and they would be happy to put that to basic human needs if they only had a way to do that. So we were created as that way. The challenge is, how to be a steward of your resources. Most people don't like to deal with their money. They like somebody else to deal with their money, like someone else to deal with their investments. But all money, no matter where it's stored, is making something happen. So the trick is to know what your money is making happen and how much of it you want to use to make something happen directly in your community, directly from your values. Whether that's your personal savings or the endowment of your organization or just reserve accounts. So the first investor, it's funny, when I was hired, I remember very distinctly listening to being told what I just told you. And clearly the board was split about, they weren't sure which was a bigger problem, who were we going to lend to or who the heck was going to lend to us. And so who was the first one to lend to us? The Sisters of Mercy. And they were about putting their money where their mission is, connecting their faith and finance. And so they, we got our act together, and we had some loans to make, and so the Sisters of Mercy were going to make a loan to us. And I remember very clearly, the first 6 months I was working there, Sister Ellen came and she handed me this check. And I didn't grow up Catholic, so I didn't have any preconceived notions, but this woman was a lot taller than me and looking at me very directly. She hands me this check, and she doesn't let go of it. So you're both standing there holding on to this check. A little awkward, direct eye contact, and she says, do something good with this and don't lose it. So those were my marching instructions, and the marching instructions for our organization kind of set the tone, sort of tough love. And since then, religious investors have been key to our ability to have capital to lend. And in the back when you leave, there'll be an annual report out there, and it has everything in it that you're going to hear today. So you don't have to remember anything you don't want to remember. But so if you look there's a list of investors in it, and under S, you'll find the Sisters of this and the Sisters of that. And all over the country, they're trying to link their faith and their finance together. Also, the Episcopal Church has really taken this on as a proactive activity. And the National Episcopal Church was one of the first ones to do this kind of community-based investing, and the Episcopal Diocese of New Hampshire, and about half the Episcopal congregations, including St. Paul, are investors here. And I thought that was just because I grew up Episcopalian, I knew where the money was, and I knew what it was called and what the people were. But since then, the Unitarians have been very active as a denomination, and then you kind of have a little bit of everything. The Concord Quaker Meeting is an investor. These are active stewards of resources. But the thing is, actually, of all the community loan funds across the country, we have a lot less religious money than most others. And I remember I kind of felt bad about that. Thought that's because I quit going to church in the 6th grade, and kind of had an argument with my father about that. And Bishop Doug Thurner, who was just a marvelous person, said, no, it wasn't my fault. It's really New Hampshire. People left. They went to Massachusetts for freedom of religion, and they left Massachusetts for New Hampshire for freedom from religion. And so we are less churched than most places. But I would say that we're no less spiritual or no less emphatic about how we want to express our values with our money. So the second investor to us that first year was a man named Bill Mee from Canterbury, somebody that I met. I lived there. He's a Quaker. And he just liked the idea of investing locally and directly with people. And I think as a young person, he just wanted to encourage me, and I appreciate that. Since then, we have over 400 individual investors. Many of you in this room are investors, and we have the most individual investors of any of the other loan funds across the country. The third investor with us was a bank, and I'd like to tell you the name of this bank, but I can't remember anymore. That bank has been bought and sold and bought again, so I can't remember the genealogy anymore of that bank. But they were being community-minded, and they needed us as a partner to get money to go where they couldn't make it go because of their rules and because of profitability. And so now we have 20 banks investing in us. Not every bank in New Hampshire, but close, including Merrimack County Savings Bank. Acknowledge them as a sponsor today. Since then, a lot of others have invested in the Community Loan Fund. Foundations, talk about stored money with values behind it. The New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, Endowment for Health, H&H Foundation, Furlan's Family Foundation, lots of others. Also, nonprofit organizations have invested with us. And I love the sort of miscellany of this list. One of my favorite ones is the New Hampshire chapter of the National Association of Social Workers. You know, it just goes to show anybody can be an investor and at any amount. The Nashua Soup Kitchen, 2 historical societies, the Monadnock Folklore Society, Friends of Madbury Library, the Mayhew Program. I mean, basically anywhere, you know, there's $10,000 extra that you just have sitting there that you don't need, that could be invested with us. Businesses, although I think of businesses as net borrowers mostly, but Amoskeag Industries and some others. And my favorite is the Better Business Bureau of New Hampshire is an investor with us. The other category of investors that's quite common all over the country is government. Guess what we have even less of than religious money. But you know, the New Hampshire Housing Authority and the CDFA, Community Development Finance Authority, are both lenders, are quasi-agencies coming through. So those things put us a little bit behind it, but the individuals really make up for it. So we have 830 investments now, and it's everything from $1,000 to over $1 million. And all these investments earn interest. And the staff has always reminded me, make sure you tell them we never lost anybody's money. So we never lost anybody's money. But of course, now that I've said that, I have to say, past performance is no indication of future performance. And it's not guaranteed. You basically get an unsecured Best Girl Scout promissory note. It's not FDIC insured, it's not insured by the government, it's not insured by anybody. But we haven't lost anybody's money. So all of these investors are getting a twofer. Your money's doing double duty. You're earning interest and you're helping people in the community that couldn't get help otherwise. So this investing is one invisible way that you can help and one way that you can take action with your values. The Good Samaritan didn't turn away or refuse to see. And so that I would ask you, do you know what your money is doing today? Might you place some of those resources with the Community Loan Fund? Is this one way to express your Good Samaritan values while still meeting your fiduciary duties? And I want to recognize Ken. Where's Ken back here? Ken Kunhart. If you just can't wait, you should wait till after breakfast, but if you want to go see him, he'll help you figure out how to do this if you want to do this. So thank you. Thank you, Ken. So now I've done 2/3 of what Helen asked me to do. Next, I want to talk about where are these invisible needs where access to capital can be used to help people help themselves. So I told you who our first investor was, and usually I do this in the other order, but I thought that with the Good Samaritan theme, we should talk about sort of systematic resources and how to put them to use first. So our first loan was in 1984 in Meredith, New Hampshire. There were 13 families living in a mobile home park. And the elderly owner of that park needed to sell her home. Actually, her husband needed to go into a nursing home, and probably you guys know the rules better than I do, but you can't own certain assets and go and get help when you're in a nursing home. So she needed to sell her home. She didn't want to leave, but she needed to. Excuse me. So, you know, it's sort of classic. You know, these folks are in their homes and they're watching these Lincoln Town cars with Massachusetts plates drive around their park. It's in the Lakes region at a time of development, and they know that whoever buys this is going to do something else with it besides have a mobile home park. And so they know they're all going to be evicted. And so they go thinking, you know, some of them, these homes they're not even meant to be mobile now, but they weren't, because they now have roofs and porches and garages built on them, so there's no way to move them. And plus, there's nowhere to move them to. You can't afford to buy land and put a septic and driveways and all that sort of thing. So they're really stuck. So the Meanwhile, the steering committee of good citizens creating the New Hampshire Green Loan Fund, you know, in New Hampshire way, right? A woman on the steering committee's best friend is the sister of someone who lives in this park, right? And she's getting a degree at New Hampshire College, and so they think, well, why don't you go help him? So she goes and she meets with him, and she helps him pull together the homeowners and create a corporation, a cooperative corporation, to become a buyer of that park. And they went for, he had already gone himself to try to get bank financing to buy it. And the bank said, you know, you don't have a down payment, what do you know about running the business? And then when he went back with his co-op, they said, you still don't have a down payment, and what do you know about running a business? And now what the hell is a co-op, you know? So that's what, so that by that time, we had our act together, and the Sisters of Mercy had lent to us. So we loaned them money to buy that land and keep their homes there. And they actually gave the woman a life estate in her house so she could stay in her home too. So it was really a win-win for everybody. And so this is great. You know, so they have a problem, right? They're all going to be evicted. Some of them would have resulted in bankruptcy or homelessness. And they're thinking, I'm going to lose my house. They're not thinking, I have an access to capital problem. And then, but by organizing together, we brought them this idea, because they're thinking, how can we afford to buy this? But their rents are the economic engine that's paying for whoever is owning that park. And so that is an idea that they didn't really get, that they had strengths that they didn't know they had. They pay those rents. And so we helped them create that corporation. They own it. So we brought them an idea and also the technical assistance, like we walked them through the process of doing that. And so they were able to take a problem they had and create an enterprise with it, and then they had an access. And then they said, where will we get the money? And we got to say, we'll lend it to you. And so they now still own it 31 years later. They're debt-free. I think we saw them recently. Their rents were, I think, $150 a month, probably the lowest, definitely the lowest in the state, probably the lowest in the country. So what did we see? We saw that manufactured housing, you know, they used to call them trailers because they were. And then in 1976, there's a housing code. So since then, they've been built as houses that were meant to be mobile. Now they're no longer really meant to be mobile. They're just small houses built indoors. So manufactured housing, it's very affordable housing in a state that has terrible affordable housing problem. But there's a systematic problem here too. After we made that loan, we're very proud of ourselves. We made our first loan. We start getting called. Remember the New Hampshire Times? We got an article in the New Hampshire Times, and people, for like 3 years later, I would meet people with that article, like all sweaty and crumbled up on the corners, and they were calling us because our park just got sold, and we're all being evicted because they're going to put a marina in here. Our park just got sold. They doubled the rents. I think they're trying to force out the elderly folks on the old part of the park. Our park just got sold. They're going to build a strip mall here. Our park just got sold. They're going to build high-end condos here. So we saw that there's a systematic problem here. A lot of people with low incomes living in manufactured housing. There's 36,000 manufactured homes in New Hampshire. It's about 6% of our single-family housing. And it was always meant as kind of young families' first homes, and older people downsizing to small homes. And now in New Hampshire, because of the unaffordability, you see every kind of demographic in manufactured housing now. But so we brought a solution to that problem, which was cooperative ownership. Now you control the land, you're not going to get thrown out for change of use, and also you can improve it. There's two cooperatives on Fisherville Road, closed in 1994. Mr. Alosa was the seller. He wanted them to continue to have affordable housing, and he knew if he didn't sell it to them, they might lose it. The City of Concord has helped them with community development block grants for rehab. There's co-ops in Pennacook, Pembroke, Loudon, 2 in Epsom. 110 cooperatives now in New Hampshire out of 450 parks in the state. And the result is not just secure affordable housing with improved conditions, but you also have a leadership opportunity here and a chance to do mutual aid. Every single one of these parks, I hear from the police later, we go up there half as much as we used to. People get to know each other. there's more potential to make things, positive things happen. Tara Reardon, Jim can refer to Tara Reardon 6 times, I get to refer to Tara Reardon too. She's in charge of this manufactured housing. We call it resident-owned communities. So she's in charge of the team that goes out and helps sellers sell to the homeowners in their parks, and helps people come together and learn what it means to run a park. So in terms of invisibility, if you don't already, I'd ask you just to notice manufactured housing from now on, and notice it as a community asset for affordable housing. I want you to first notice them, that they exist, and these are communities. See them as homes without stereotype or stigma. See them as small, affordable houses that were built indoors in factories. See them as homes all on one level, so it's easy to adapt to for disability and aging and for young children. And see them as neighborhoods that people with low incomes can own and operate, and see the leadership potential there. They're elected officials running their own little town. We overcome invisibility too by listening. The homeowners in these parks said to us, "That's nice, but could you lend to us for our homes?" They're subject, these were used to be trailers, and they were lent to like RVs. And as the industry grew up and changed into homes, the financing industry didn't change with them. So they're still loaned on as cars or boats instead of houses. And I'd ask you about your home. If all the buyers of your house had to either pay cash or use their credit card to buy your house, how much would your house be worth? So you need financing in order to have a real market where people can buy and sell and have their homes appreciate. So we did what we were told, and we figured out, well, first, of course, we tried to talk a lot of other people into lending on these homes, and since we couldn't do that, we decided 12 years ago to start doing it ourselves. And now we have over 800 mortgages. They average $40,000 each, and over 12 years, we have, I would say, less than 2% loss rate, but the precise people in the room, it's 1.84% loss rate. And actually, most of that was in this recession, and now it's leveled out. So they perform equally well with the stick-built single-family mortgage market. And these are mortgages for purchases, refinances. We've taken out 14% loans, all kinds of predatory or near predatory loans. Help people replace homes, do home repairs, and help people with sometimes imperfect credit. They can show that they can repay, then we'll lend to them. 2 years ago, we added lending to manufactured homes on their own land, because it turned out they weren't getting a very good deal either. And the banks have no secondary market for these homes, and there's no mortgage insurance. So it's really difficult, and plus they're small and unprofitable, so it's difficult to make these loans. So I want to give a shout out to everyone in this room who's an investor, because without you, these invisible folks would not be able to control their neighborhoods or have fair financing on their homes. There's other housing needs that exist too, especially for family-friendly rental housing. In 1988, a group of individuals on the Heights were about to lose their homes to demolition and development. And they came to us, and from our effort to help them help themselves, the Concord Area Trust for Community Housing was born. It was created by people in Concord to tackle the problem of not enough affordable housing for families. The New Hampshire Community Loan Fund was incubated in the basement of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, and we incubated Catch right along with us, and the lawnmowers and the furnace and everything else that was down there. And it was led by our staff person, John Hamilton, who's the first executive director of Catch. And then we proceeded to invest in Catch for all of every project, initial project, whether it's pre-development funds or acquisition funds or gap financing, whatever they needed to get a project going or to get unstuck. And at the risk of sounding like a proud parent, I would just tell you that Catch is one of the best nonprofit housing developers in New Hampshire and maybe in the country. And I'd hope that you guys feel proud of them too. It's tough work and they need all your support, and I know they have it from most everyone here. So if you're an investor with the Community Loan Fund, then you've been an investor in Catch. And if you've been a donor to the Community Loan Fund, then you've helped us help Catch, as well as help all those homeowners in all those parks that needed a hand on learning how to be cooperative leaders. So what do we look for when we're trying to see the invisible? We try to see gaps in the free market system. I always think we're kind of funky capitalists, enjoying sort of tweaking the capitalism. So we're looking for places in the market where people with low incomes are not well served, where they're at a disadvantage, and where some infusion of capital could help them create opportunity for themselves and meet their own needs. And maybe you've had this experience where you just didn't feel like you fit in, and it makes you feel dumb, it makes you feel awkward, probably makes you not speak up as much. And also people don't always see what's positive in themselves. We're trained to see what's lacking rather than what's positive. And sometimes those situations are where you're in a gap in the capital market. It's not you personally, it's the way the system is. And sometimes, a little bit of validation, a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of training, and a little bit of tough love can go a long way to helping people manage those gaps in the market. So people need housing and they need jobs. And so we invest in businesses that can't otherwise get capital. Self-employed people typically have trouble getting capital, and self-employment is a great way to enter the economy without credentials or without formality. Businesses, there's also a lot of really good businesses that want to grow, they'll create jobs for that growth, but sometimes they can't get capital because they don't have the right recent track record for, or enough collateral for an SBA loan or for bank financing, and their cool idea isn't going to grow fast enough or big enough to interest venture capitalists. So there's these gaps in the market, and so we're investing in businesses with those gaps. There's 31,000 small businesses in New Hampshire, and many of them have a good idea, and we don't want them putting that on the shelf because they couldn't get capital. So people need housing, they need jobs, and sometimes they need services. And the nonprofits who provide those services sometimes need access to capital. We've financed 4 child care centers in Concord. At least those are the only 4 I could remember last night when I was counting. It's probably more than that. But there's 12,000 children under 6 in New Hampshire that don't have access to licensed child care. And talk about invisible, little kids, 3 and 4-year-olds, 2-year-olds. And early learning is the answer to almost any question that you could ask about how to help people meet their potential, how to solve all kinds of problems. And this has been studied to death, and yet we don't embrace our early learning centers as the key to the strength of our community. So if you want to have an impact and you could just do one thing, then I'd say adopt one of the centers in your community and go see what they need, help them do more with the kids they have, help them add kids in. I mean, in my opinion, they work miracles every day because they don't have enough resources. And so if you could just do one thing, grab a hold of them and help them be great. The Community Loan Fund also financed the first location of the Friendly Kitchen. They came to us as a completely cashless organization who wanted to buy a building. And we acted like a partner and a tough love lender with them, and I'm so pleased for them and how Concord has rallied for them, and look how far they've come. They've just done awesome. We own some property that we took in foreclosure in the last big recession in 1990 in Manchester, and it was out of those properties that we incubated families in transition to help people have places to recover from homelessness and get their children into safe, secure housing. Fit's come a long way since then, including to Concord, which I'm really glad for. So each of these borrowers, these nonprofit borrowers, are fabulous groups of community members, good Samaritans, people like you, people like us, who see a need in the community, and they organize themselves to help people help themselves. And when they get stuck for lack of capital, we try to be right there for them. So Helen, I think I've done everything that you asked me to do. So now, just to review, you all now know everything I know about the Community Loan Fund. You have lots of examples of creating opportunity out of problems. I'd also say it takes a certain discipline to see the invisible people and see what their strengths are, since they probably don't see it themselves. Sprinkle in a little know-how and partnership, all of which exists in this room. And you can see what might come of that for helping solve the problems that you see and that might need capital too. And I just told you 31 years in 15 minutes. And I would just say it's okay to take small steps and try things. We've done things that didn't work out as well as we liked, and we stopped doing them, and we learned from that. And certainly there's a lot more to do. And also at Helen's instruction, I've tried to tell you about a way to invest, to be a good Samaritan through investments, a kind of way to act on your values around some systematic issues that are hard to touch directly yourself, but you have money that you control directly that can go toward that. And the first step is, your task would be to take on understanding what your investment is doing now. Your own personal money, as well as that of the organizations you belong to or that you lead, like your church or your nonprofit organization. And I'd also warn you that it might take a little courage to raise this question with financial experts, because you're not going to feel as smart about it as you would like to. But it's okay to be a little persistent in the face of professional discouragement. And small amounts are okay. Build it up. But money you own or control right now is mostly walking right by without seeing an invisible person who has needs for capital. So consider, some of that taking some of that capital, and I would encourage you to use us. You helped create us. We're a community institution that you created and built in order to get funds to go where they need to go. I forgot to tell you the other thing that Sister Ellen told me when asked why she did this. And she said, well, I don't really want to have to read a headline in the Union Leader that said, nuns foreclose on low-income people. So that's our job. Our job is to figure out the tough love, how to make it work. And you don't have to do that. But you have to make the choice, though, to use us as we are intended to be used, to connect up money with needs and to way for you to invest your funds right here directly. So it's a twofer. You get social impact, plus you earn interest, and you get your money back too. And I'm not going to say all that stuff I had to say before. You already heard it once. So I hope you leave today with a little bit more idea of what's possible. And my prayerful father was very supportive of me and helpful. And he was glad for this job I have. Of course, like any parent, glad your kid has a job that has health insurance. And but I have to say, he lived to be almost 90, and he never really figured out what I did for a living. And he wasn't sure whether I was a banker or a social worker, and maybe he had that about right. So I thank you for inviting me today to talk about the Community Loan Fund as one way that we can together see what is unseen and act on our values like Good Samaritans. So thank you, and have a great day.
You see how it's just much easier if we all do what Helen says, right? Julie leaves a great message, and that is, everyone needs a little bit of help, and when you do give someone a little bit of help, it's amazing when you can empower them, what they can do, and how they can thrive. So I want a couple of housekeeping measures. One, I want to thank Concord TV for videotaping this. Thank you very much, and you can watch this, I'm sure, next week, like you can all of their shows on their channel. I want to thank Helen. I can't tell you, it doesn't happen without her, trust me. Before I'm going to bring up Reverend Jed Reardon to close out this breakfast, but before I do, I also want to just give a little thank you to John Cassidy. He's always there with a steady hand for me and reminds me of how to do this. And I'll leave you with this. So, as the Good Samaritan opened his hand and reached down and helped someone in need with an open heart, the fact is that person stopped. And I want to leave you with a thank you for stopping, because I know you all stop to help someone else. And you can never, never underestimate, trust me, never underestimate the power of example that you live every day and what a difference it can make in someone's life. So thank you for stopping. Reverend Ridley.
And so, fellow Good Samaritans, may God grant us enough love that we can no longer contain it, enough joy that we can no longer keep it to ourselves, enough hope that despair has to shout to get our attention, enough courage that we forget to be afraid, enough faith that we take to the Jericho roads, enough sight to notice those who are invisible, enough peace to befuddle the forces of alienation, enough confidence to trust God to meet us in our neighbors, and the audacity to act accordingly. Go in peace.